Hi, my name is Evan Nicolai. I am a graduate student in the biomedical engineering program at Mayo Clinic Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences. And my poster is Mapping the Intended and Unintended Effects of Vagus Nerve Stimulation.
So what were some of your results, or what were you trying to do in the study?
So basically, when we're doing vagus nerve stimulation clinically, we just wrap two big electrodes around the vagus. And when you stimulate there, you don't really control where that current is going. And when they did a study 12 months out after implanting these in clinical patients, they saw that only 12% of them were getting the effects they wanted. So we said, okay, can we do a more intelligent stimulation of the vagus nerve to get better effects? So one of the things that we looked at, I don't know if we can see this on the poster, is that we get the myelinated fibers, which are responsible for muscle activation, and the unmyelinated fibers in a different area of the vagus nerve, kind of localized. So perhaps if we stimulate over here, we might get a lot of muscle activation. If we stimulate over here, maybe we'll get a lot of heart rate change. So then what we did was, instead of taking two big electrodes, we took very small electrodes. And we put them at very specific points around the vagus and said, okay, if we're over here where we might expect to see a lot of muscle change, and then over here where we might avoid that, what do we see? And if we go back to this panel over here, we kind of saw that. You know, if you stimulate on the opposite side, you get more heart rate change than muscle change. And if you stimulate on the branch side, you get more muscle change than heart rate change. So maybe this could be a future clinical use where we get more specific and more tailored effects for the patients and get better responses for them.
And is this a universal thing? Like all patients have this in all species? I mean, you weren't doing this in humans, right?
No, so this is in pigs. And this is really the first step. You know, we have another person in our group, Megan Sattel, who is looking at how does the morphology of the vagus change between pigs and humans and dogs and rats. Rats and dogs are two other species that a lot of people are looking at vagus nerve stimulation for. So now if we look at the differences between them, we can start to think about how do these responses, how might they happen in the human, and how might those, make sense with the studies we've already done in rats and dogs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how specific is everything? I mean, you were saying basically the heart and all these different things are affected in different ways. Like, is it very specific or is it pretty generalized? I mean, like if you're on one side of the nerve, do you only get this, or does everything get activated?
So we're seeing a spectrum, right? You know, there are other effects. We get breathing effects. And the EMG right now we're just measuring broadly. So EMG is the kind of the amount of muscle activation, the electrical current in the muscle. So that's not coughing. You know, in humans it's coughing that the muscle activation is. Right now we're just measuring baseline, how much muscle activation are we getting. So we have to look at, what does that mean for coughing? And right now we're just looking at muscle activation and heart rate. And we see kind of a differential amount, so maybe here in one spot we get a lot of muscle activation, a little bit of heart rate, and another spot we get a lot of heart rate and no muscle activation. So it's very variable right now, and we're really looking into that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And what are some next steps? What do you guys have in your sights?
So obviously this is in a pig that's anesthetized on a table. The spot that we're stimulating is wide open, it's very clean. We're gonna have to do this in, chronic animals that are awake, walking around. The electrodes have been implanted for a long time because, for the patient, you get implanted and then you go about daily life. So we have to more realistically simulate that for future experiments.
Okay, cool, very cool. Any final thoughts or anything you want to add?
No, thank you very much for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you.